Ukraine is shooting down Shaheds from a prop plane with rifles. It's insane footage, but in a mad world, only the mad are sane. Get this, a Ukrainian soldier leans out of the back seat of a Soviet-era Yak-52 trainer aircraft, raises a rifle, and starts shooting at a Russian attack drone. That sentence sounds like someone fed World War I, Cyberpunk, and Charles M. Schultz into a blender and hit puree. The video looks ridiculous at first. I thought it was AI on first viewing. It's not. A propeller plane, a human gunner, an assault rifle, and a Russian drone filled with explosives lumbering through the sky. Then you look closer, pull up the specifications, and realize Ukraine hasn't lost its mind. Ukraine has found a cheap answer to a cheap threat, and in doing so, accidentally exposed one of the most expensive structural failures in modern air defense. I'm talking about NATO here. Hey friends, Wes O'Donnell, Army, Infantry, and Air Force veteran, where we live in fame or go down in flame because nothing will stop the US Air Force. So the aircraft in the footage is the Yakolev Yak-52, a Soviet-designed two-seat piston trainer built for aerobatic instruction. On social media, some commenters are calling this a World War II prop plane. That's incorrect. It first flew in 1979, was mass-produced for Warsaw Pact Air Forces, and has spent most of its life teaching student pilots how to not die. It wasn't designed for combat. It has no weapon systems, no radar, no self-protection suite, and no provision for turning a passenger into a rear gunner. Just pure flying. Well, Ukraine apparently took that last part as a suggestion. The Yak-52 has a maximum speed around 285 kilometers per hour, which is about, carry the 177 miles per hour, a cruise speed of about 190 kilometers per hour, and a stall speed roughly 85 to 105 kilometers per hour, depending, of course, on configuration. And it has a service ceiling of around 4,000 meters. Standard Russian Shaheds cruise somewhere around 170 to 200 kilometers per hour. We do have information that Russia has increased Shahed speeds after Ukrainian interceptor drones began catching them, and some newer jet-powered Shahed variants can reach approximately 400 kilometers per hour. So the piston engine Shahed lives squarely in the Yak-52's performance neighborhood. The jet-powered Shahed does not. That distinction will become important in a minute. The Yak-52 offers Ukraine something a truck-mounted machine gun can never provide: geometry. A ground-based crew has to wait for a Shahed to enter their firing arc, hold still for long enough to engage, and accept whatever angle the drone decides to present. A Yak-52 crew can chase the drone, match its altitude, position behind or alongside of it, and reduce closure rates enough that a rifleman in the rear seat becomes a realistic threat. The problem shifts from hit a moving aerial target from the ground at night to something considerably more tractable. That's the entire logic. The airplane is the targeting solution. But what about the rifle? Well, here's where the physics get interesting. I can tell you from my infantry service, the weapon is an AR pattern carbine fitted with a compact red dot sight. That's the right call for this mission. Magnified optics would slow target acquisition at the ranges this crew is actually working at. A red dot says the gunner already knows he's solving a close-range problem, not a long-range one. My farthest qualification target in the Army was about 300 meters. That was a stationary target from a stable position. It was hard, not impossible, that's why it was a qualification standard, but there was nothing casual about it. A standard M4 type 5.56mm carbine carries a maximum effective range of around 500 meters on a point target. That's the mil-spec version. The M16A4 stretches slightly further, around 550 meters for point targets. Now, those are ground-based figures under controlled conditions. Now, put that same shooter in the rear cockpit of an aircraft moving roughly 100 to 150 miles per hour. The shooter is fighting aircraft motion, turbulence, awkward body position, sight offset, a limited firing window, and the general psychological experience of hanging partially out of a Soviet trainer at altitude. The drone he's shooting at is moving at 100 to 125 miles per hour on its own vector. The geometry changes constantly. The math gets ugly fast. And yet, the video shows a kill. Several, in fact. The reason is distance. The Yak-52 crew almost certainly isn't making a 400-meter rifle shot. They're closing to a range where the rifle stops being a precision instrument and starts being a close-quarter solution. Now, I've had a lot of people tell me, hey, couldn't they be firing a shotgun? Well, this is definitely an AR platform, a rifle that they're using, but that doesn't mean that they're not using some kind of fragmentary rounds out of the rifle that sort of act like a shotgun. Now look at that detonation debris cloud. It's right off the wingtip. The Yak-52's wingspan is about 9.3 meters, and the visible wing section is maybe half that. And the explosion appears to be perhaps 20 to 40 meters from the aircraft. Still some decent marksmanship given all the variables, but it also means that crew is close enough for detonation to be a genuine threat to the aircraft. So why does it look so far away in the footage? Well, the gunner is wearing a GoPro-style action cam with its notorious fisheye view. This makes things around the edges of the frame appear extremely close, and things in the center of the frame appear farther than they are. This dynamic also explains why shotguns keep surfacing in Ukrainian drone defense. Benelli's purpose-built M4 Drone Guardian, for instance, is advertised for optimal effectiveness from 0 to 50 meters with an extended range up to 100 meters. The anti-drone small arms conversation has collectively recognized that the weapon isn't the hard part, closing the distances. Once you solve distance, the weapon becomes much less important. The Yak-52 solves distance. The rifle just finishes the job. So why not mount a gun on the Yak? Well, this is the obvious follow-up question, and it has a frustrating answer. The aviationist notes that Ukraine appears to be relying on handheld weapons rather than wing-mounted or podded guns because airframe modification is technically difficult and tedious. A trainer aircraft wasn't designed around recoil loads, gun harmonization, ammunition feed systems, wiring, sensors, or combat integration. You can bolt something to an airplane quickly. You can make it safe, accurate, reliable, maintainable, and repeatable only after engineers turn it into a multi-month engineering project. A man with a rifle is available today. A properly integrated gun pod is available after a process that will outlast several Shahed campaigns. Ukraine picked the option that works now. And there's a harder problem developing, and it should worry anyone watching this approach with admiration. Russia is learning. Business Insider reported in December 2025 that a Ukrainian Sting interceptor drone shot down a Shahed carrying an R-60 air-to-air missile. Wild Hornets assessed that Russia may be actively working to counter the Ukrainian helicopters and aircraft conducting drone intercepts. That represents a strategic shift. Russia has noticed the hunters, and now it's arming the prey. A Yak-52 with a rifleman has no answer for a Shahed that shoots back. It has no electronic warfare protection, no missile warning system, no countermeasures, and no margin for error if Russian air defenses or armed drones enter the engagement. The performance envelope that makes it useful against a slow one-way attack drone, low and slow, also makes it uniquely vulnerable. This isn't a reason to dismiss what Ukraine is doing. It's a reason to understand what needs to come next. The real argument is fill the gap with something designed for it. And I want to be clear, this is not a Ukrainian problem. All nations will need to recalibrate their forces, air and ground-based air defense, to adjust to the low and slow problem set. The Yak-52 has stumbled into a capability gap that NATO should have anticipated and filled years ago. Modern air defense architecture was built around two assumptions. The threats worth killing are either very fast, like jets or cruise missiles, or very small and stealthy, like ballistic missiles or maneuvering warheads. The systems procured to defeat those targets, like Patriots, NASAMS, F-16s, and F-35s, are extraordinarily capable against those specific targets, but against a 200 km/h propeller drone that costs $30,000 to manufacture, well, they're the wrong answer, financially and operationally. The Yak-52 is Ukraine's improvised bridge across that gap. What that gap actually demands is a purpose-built aircraft optimized for the low, slow, cheap aerial threat environment. Now, there's a couple of platforms that illustrate what that looked like. The A-29 Super Tucano is a turboprop light attack aircraft designed for counterinsurgency, armed reconnaissance, and operations in low-threat airspace. Specifications put it around 590 kilometers per hour maximum speed, about 520 kilometers per hour cruise, a stall speed of around 148 kilometers per hour, about 1,800 kilograms of external payload, and endurance that can stretch for hours, depending on stores and fuel load. That performance band makes it dramatically more capable than the Yak-52 against the full Shahed speed spectrum, including the jet-powered variants, while still slow enough to engage the piston engine targets without screaming past them at fighter jet closure rates. It can carry guns, rockets, and guided munitions, like APKWS. It has a real sensor suite. Its crew doesn't have to lean out a window. Then there's the Textron Scorpion. It represents the jet-powered version of the same concept. Textron listed at 450 knots maximum speed, a 45,000-foot service ceiling, a 3,000-pound internal payload bay, and 6 hardpoints. It was designed for ISR and light strike at a fraction of the cost of high-end combat aircraft or even the A-10. For persistent drone intercept operations, it offers the performance envelope to address fast Shaheds while remaining economically viable as a daily operational platform. Typhoons, F-16s, F-15s, and potentially Gripens are all being pushed toward a world where fighters don't just duel other fighters. They hunt drones, they protect bases, they cover logistics hubs, they intercept cruise missiles, they loiter near likely attack corridors, and they wait for the next low, slow threat to wander into the kill chain like a Roomba with a warhead. Now this is where Ukraine's Yak-52 starts to look less like an oddity and more like the first ugly draft of a new doctrine. Ukraine is using what it has: trainers, rifles, mobile gun teams, interceptor drones, electronic warfare, helicopters, and Western air defense. NATO is trying to build the cleaner version. Fighters loaded with cheap guided rockets supported by sensors and data links and command networks that can assign the right weapon to the right target. But the specific aircraft matters less than the concept. Persistent, armed, sensor-equipped platforms with enough speed to intercept slow threats and enough payload to kill them without expending million-dollar weapons. A layered defense built around electronic warfare and interceptor drones and mobile gun systems, all that stuff represents a sustainable economic answer to mass drone campaigns. Individual components of that layered defense are already proven. The gap is the dedicated hunter-killer aircraft sitting between the pickup trucks and the F-16. So the Yak-52 with a rifleman in the back is proof that the gap exists. It's also proof that the gap can be closed for far less money than anyone in a peacetime procurement office was willing to spend. So a Soviet trainer aircraft hunting Iranian drones with a soldier hanging out the rear cockpit firing an AR rifle is exactly as absurd as it looks and exactly as rational as the Ukrainian military's track record suggests. The aircraft is almost perfectly matched to its target in speed and altitude. The rifle works because the airplane solves the distance problem. The crew is doing something genuinely dangerous with genuinely limited tools, and it's producing confirmed kills. The larger lesson is for NATO planners who should be watching this footage and asking themselves why the most cost-effective drone intercept platform currently operating in the world's most active air war is a 40-year-old aerobatic trainer armed with a carbine. Well, the answer is uncomfortable, because nothing better was procured, because the threat wasn't taken seriously until it showed up over Kyiv, and because the gap between a Patriot battery and a guy with a machine gun in a pickup truck was considered someone else's problem. Ukraine filled that gap with what it had. The question for everyone else is what they're building to fill it after this. That's it for today, my friends. Subscribing is the best free way to support this channel. If you want the deeper reads, I am over at Substack at wesodonnell.com. Subscribing keeps this analysis going and allows me to brag to my high school guidance counselor that, see, YouTube is a viable career choice. And as we always say around these parts, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Crimea is Ukraine.